My name is Pedro. I'm currently the EVP of Marketing and Retail for CMG Asia. CMG is basically a platform, right? It's a platform for life enhancement. What we do really is to take people's lifestyle, specifically in Vietnam, and try and touch it in every single of its angles, right? Whether it is, what they do socially, working out, going to movies, enjoying life. Whether that is, improving their healthcare, the way they look, through, some sort of surgery or some sort of medical intervention, or just what they consume, right? Content, retail, etc., etc. So really, what we're trying to do is following an approach of cradle to grave, touch people's lives at every single stage since they're 6 months of age all the way to 56 years old, right? So that is a little bit what we're trying to do in Vietnam, namely through our fitness offerings right now, but also through our clinics, health clinics, as well, as well as our retail presence throughout the entire life cycle of our touch points, and wrapped around in a very exciting and engaging media play, where we have a bunch of different platforms providing content and consumables, everyday consumables to customers. The question is, how is commerce adapting to digital, right? I mean, ultimately, looking at Vietnam, the population has leapfrogged from not having a phone to having a smartphone, right? So over the last, say, 10 years, the country has seen a very quick adoption of smartphones. Today, estimates change according to source, but say around 30 to 40% of all people in Vietnam have a smartphone, and out of those, majority of them are connected to internet, right? That means that people consume digital on the go, right? So they have leapfrogged that stage of having a normal phone, a feature phone, to going directly to smartphones. Equally, just being online is part of people's lives, right? Gaming is very big. Consuming news online is very big, simply because Vietnam is very dispersed, geographically speaking. So the reality is, people consume digital. They consume Facebook, they consume Google, they consume other search engines that you have locally. They consume their local-made games as well as international games. The reality is, it's there. Now, the question is, how can commerce catch up on that? I think, from very early on, Vietnam has probably been, out of all countries in Southeast Asia, the one where e-commerce has evolved faster. So it's not uncommon for small mom and pop shops to, have their e-commerce. But the question is how to establish confidence, consumer trust. And I think that's what commerce has been trying to catch up on. I think just setting up a shop and being online has been very easy. To a certain extent, in great urban areas, the infrastructure is there. It's also very cheap for you to start your own e-commerce platform. But the trust has historically not been there. So what you see with the big commerce players, such as, the Lazadas of this world, or, the central groups, or the VIN groups, and even CMG, what we're trying to do, all these players are trying to do is say, all right, let's look at what is already there, and let's distance ourselves and differentiate ourselves from those by offering really high quality products, standards, customer processes, and customer service, to really engage with the consumers in a way that they like to be treated, right? Which is with trust, with transparency, and obviously keeping the ultimate premise of being online and digital, which is having something fast and at very comparable prices, or at least very very attractive prices. Right? So I reckon you could probably start with the challenges of the market, right? So looking at Vietnam, Vietnam historically was a multitude of ethnologies brought together. And the reason why is obviously historical, but it's so dispersed, right? So from north to south, the country changes drastically, right? So what you have is a country that is highly dispersed, so across a big stretch of land. There's urban population, although sizable, is still considerably small compared to the entire population of the country. So between Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, which are the main urban areas, you probably have around 20, 24 million people. The country has 93 million people, right? So there's population is highly dispersed. Infrastructure is not there as a normal, developing market. Infrastructure is still scarce, and payments have historically been also developing at a slower rate than the demand, right? So today cash is king, and because cash is king, payments and the dispersion of e-commerce has been slower. So knowing that that's the reality, e-commerce in Vietnam, right? E-commerce, as I said, it's been moving very quickly. In terms of offering, it has been mostly reliant on COD, cash on delivery, and it has pushed the infrastructure of deliveries to evolve to a certain extent. But really, the next stages of e-commerce will have to be around, aggregating, making local supply to local demand. So bridging the infrastructure issues and bypassing the delivery development lead time. So really bringing local supply to local demand. Will have to be around ensuring that customer service is respected, because you're serving a local demand, which means, if you mistreat your customers, it's not like you can go and recruit some other customers elsewhere. And it will really be about pushing payments. I mean, again, cash on delivery is king, but that is just an in-between stage, right? What you can see is already e-wallets are ramping up. Credit card payments are growing fast, still small, but fast. And ultimately, alternative payment methods are also on the rise, right? Whether it is scratch cards or SMS payment or whatever that will be, that's e-commerce, how it will evolve, right? In terms of offering, I don't think there will be anything super new. You have your Lazadas, which is your Amazon of Southeast Asia. You have your fashion, which would be the Zalora/Central Group. You have digital products. I don't think the offering will be so different. I think it's more about how is it that each of the players will tap into the specificities of the market and really circumvent those. On the side, I think a next big differentiator point will be how you wrap the offering to a lifestyle, right? And that's, if you look at a group like CMG, where is it that we actually make the difference, right? Which is, we'll be offering pretty much the same as everybody else. It's just, it will be more targeted, because we'll know what people are consuming media-wise. We'll know what people like to do in their free time. And so because we'll be on all those, different stages of people's lives every single day, it will be much easier for us to offer in a non-invasive way whatever suits you best, right? Whatever your needs need in order to be met, right? So that's, e-commerce-wise, that's, I think, the positive outlook for the next couple of years. Ultimately, offline and online are one and the same, right? I think, let's look at what we know about online. Today, online commerce, the most developed business models within online would be, say, your Alibaba in China or your Amazon in the US. Right? Ultimately, let's take Amazon as being the most developed because it's just been there for longer. It's also in a more matured market. Looking at Amazon has started off as a purely online business. Today, what you see is the biggest pockets of growth are within the consumables, are within the offline. And so what you just have is an evolution from one channel, which is online, to offline, right? Now, equally, what you have majority of the offline retailers trying to do is moving from offline to online. Now, do I believe that there's exclusively one channel or the other? No. I think it's not even a matter of omni-channel. It's just there needs to be a cohesive presence across customer touchpoints. If you know that on average today a customer needs anywhere from 9 to 16 different touchpoints to buy something, and if your ultimate target is to get the customer to buy something, then you just need to be wherever this customer is consuming those touchpoints, right? Whether it is online, whether it is offline, customers have more and more a specific preference on how they want to consume, or how they want to at least take the last decision when it comes to consuming. So for retailers, the ones that are not yet considering online, my only message is start now, because it will take time. For those who are already considering online, they need to see it as a marketing, as a wholly integrated marketing, omni-channel, if you want to call it, strategy, but really just a part of your customer touch points. If for those who are purely online, I would say they're riding a wave. Eventually, the Amazon situation will come to wherever we are, and so we'll be seeing the opposite. At that point, will be really about whoever has mastered best the interaction with the customer at the different touch points, and they're we'll only know in a couple of years from now. Right? That's a good question. I think ultimately, if you look at companies as being a machine, right, a system, and the only thing that you can do is a little bit to quote Bill Walsh, right? Ultimately, the scar takes care of itself, right? So, assuming that the only thing that you can do is put the machine together and fine-tune the machines of the pieces of the machine, such that you have the machine that can compete within whatever you need to compete, whatever channels or whatever situation you need to compete with other players in terms of consumer spending, right? Then I think that machine comprises of a couple of different things. One is people, the other one is processes, and the last one is leadership or vision. I think what retailers can do, so going to your question, what retailers can do to compete, number one, and starting with the last one, is not get lost. I think e-commerce is not a disruptive technology. It's been around. Digital is not new. It's not offline and online. It's both, right? It's one and the other together. So definitely from a vision standpoint, retailers need to stand on their feet and look at it the way it is, which is as an integrated strategy. Second, they need to have a clear vision of how they want to tackle it, right? Doesn't matter if that's how they're going to get there, but just a direction that can point their resources and their operations towards a certain direction, at least say at 6 months at a time, right? Then I think it's about having the right team in place, right? So yes, you can have a right direction, but if the team is not behind it, or if you don't have people that are, and here it doesn't matter if they're young or not, but really who do not understand or think as digital consumers or as e-commerce consumers, then you'll never get the insight of bringing your company towards that direction, right? So I think really vesting your company with either new blood or finding the right talent within your company to kind of help you steer that transformation and that direction is key, right? And obviously nurturing that team towards giving them a voice within the marketing strategy meetings, or whatever that in your company looks like. Equally, as you move online, I think there's a set of different skill sets that may not exist in your company. Anything from social media all the way to the more technical, how to manage a product, meaning a website or your platform, to the in-betweens of how do you drive traffic and optimize your conversion rates. All that needs to be there, right? So either through investing in your team to build that skill set, or bringing in people, that's definitely key. And then the last point really is process. So once you have the right vision, leadership, as well as the right people, how do you empower your people to create those processes and to create a dynamic within your company to compete on that market? Simply because online is typically faster paced, right? I mean, people are taught to fail fast, right? And learn faster. So, when you move online, your entire business just needs to step up and, speed up, right? So take an example, if you're a retailer offline, and if you have a website and, a store that lives off of visual merchandising, and if you're seeing that online something is not converting, most likely there is a correlation to your offline visual merchandising, right? So how do you get both to interact and to really, speak and act fast, right? Equally, if you have something that you've always known that has worked offline, how do you transport that to online setup and really get an online offering that is tailored to not to cannibalize your offline, but really to build on top of what you have offline. So I think just that type of discussions is something that, for instance, in our company happens every single day. But just having the right processes, ensuring that you've got, marketing working streamlined, you've got your retail operations or your sales operations working streamlined, and then obviously everything tying into together with, just customer operations, finance, legal. Everything needs to work towards one goal, which is how to serve customers in the vast majority of touch points, that being online and offline. Right? So in Vietnam, I'll be covering a broad range of topics, but really, I guess the most exciting one will be probably a roundtable that we'll have on mobile commerce and how it's changing the landscape of Vietnam, and specifically its consumers as well as retail. And there will be very interesting participants there as well. So it's definitely going to be an interesting discussion to be heard. But from our side, what we'll probably bring to the table is, look, we have right now a, over $100 million business per year, living off of multiple different customer touch points. What we see digital is over 70-80% of our touch points are mobile, right? And we've learned, being in it's not necessarily e-commerce, but being in a business that is wholly integrated from lead gen online all the way to conversion offline, what we'll be discussing is what is it we've learned online, specifically regards to mobile, for everyday companies, companies that live off of sales, and what is it we've learned there in terms of how to best target consumers, how to best communicate. What is, how does a video versus a text ad or versus a blog post work, right? As well as all the way to the intricacies of, all right, once you have this person on your platform, then how is it that you convert them, and how is it that ties into your offline sales cycle, which typically is the hard part, right? So all this is something that we're going to be definitely discussing in Vietnam, as well as a range of other different topics on e-commerce and offline retail. But I guess, more to see and hear once you're in Vietnam. I reckon that's it. I hope, everyone can join us at Seamless Vietnam, which happens this year in September 6 and 7. I'll see you there.